Hi friends, welcome to Without a Trace's 100th episode. I am so grateful for each and every one of you. Please help the podcast continue growing by following Without a Trace on social media, subscribing if you aren't already, and sharing the show with your friends. Thank you for being here. Now let's jump into today's story. In September 2017, a 32-year-old teacher vanished from the Virgin Islands after one of the worst storms to ever hit the Caribbean. To the surprise of local authorities, this was her third time disappearing. Search efforts were halted when devastation struck again and a second hurricane hit the islands. Her fate remains unknown, and those who love her continue to hope that she might still be found. Welcome to Without a Trace. I'm your host, Jolynn. Every file holds a mystery. Every story deserves to be heard. This is Hannah's story. Hannah Upp was born on November 29, 1984. She was raised in Oregon as the daughter of two Methodist ministers. Her parents divorced when she was 15 years old, and her father moved abroad to preach the gospel to native tribes in Africa and Southeast Asia. Growing up in a conservative Christian household caused Hannah to struggle with her identity. Her strict father believed that there was no such thing as natural homosexuality, but by the time Hannah reached her junior year at college, she was dating a woman. Following her graduation from college, Hannah became a devoted Montessori teacher. She was living and working in the Virgin Island of St. Thomas, teaching at a local school. Living in St. Thomas felt like paradise to Hannah. She was a skilled swimmer, and being near the water overjoyed her. She seemed to have made new friends on the island as well. But in 2007, Hannah found herself moving to Harlem, New York, where she had been hired as a Spanish teacher at a public middle school. On August 28, 2008, Hannah was set to begin her second year of teaching in Harlem. That morning, her roommate wished her good luck on her first day back at work, and Hannah responded through her closed bedroom door. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. That morning, the 23-year-old teacher was last seen leaving her apartment to go for a jog. She didn't return from her run and never showed up for school that day. Alarm bells began ringing immediately, and she was soon reported missing. Her roommate had found her wallet, passport, cash, and credit cards, along with her cell phone in her purse on the floor of her bedroom. Her friends hung up 1,000 flyers on signposts and at subway stations and bus stops, while authorities began investigating Hannah's disappearance as a homicide, believing she was met with foul play while out on her jog. However, 9 days later, an acquaintance from grad school spotted her logging into her email at the Apple store in Midtown Manhattan. She was wearing the same clothes she was last seen running in. CCTV footage captured the interaction with her acquaintance, who asked her, "Are you the Hannah that everyone is looking for?" Hannah dismissed the question and exited the building. A detective asked Hannah's mother, Barbara, to come to the police station to view the Apple Store surveillance footage. Barbara watched as her daughter ascended the staircase in the store. A man stopped her and asked if she was the missing teacher in the news. Barbara said, "I could see her blow off what he was saying, and I knew instantly it was her." Barbara explained that Hannah had a characteristic gesture that couldn't be missed in the footage. She instantly knew that there was something off with her daughter. 2 days later, she was spotted at a Starbucks, but had left the coffee shop through a back exit before the police arrived. Not long after, Hannah was spotted several times using the showers at the New York Sports Club. Verifying her identity while checking her in, the front desk employee asked, "Hannah?" To which she replied, "Yes." She didn't seem to recognize who she was or why people were looking for her. Eventually, on September 16, 2008, the crew of a Staten Island ferry discovered Hannah lying face down in the Hudson River. Fortunately, she was found alive and was taken to the hospital for treatment. She was badly sunburned, dehydrated, and hypothermic, but appeared otherwise uninjured. When her roommate visited her in the hospital, Hannah told him, "I hope they release me soon because I have to set up my classroom." Hannah didn't understand that 3 weeks had passed. Months later, she told the Times, "I went from going for a run to being in the ambulance. It was like 10 minutes had passed, but it was almost 3 weeks." After her discovery, Hannah was diagnosed with dissociative fugue, a rare form of amnesia where a person temporarily loses their identity and may act without memory of who they are. An infected person may lose all recollection of who they are, where they come from, and other linkage to their life. This can be as short as a few hours or can last for months. At times, they may cover long distances, even crossing cities or countries. Hannah took comfort in the fact that these bouts of memory loss are usually once-in-a-lifetime incidents. She said, "If you work through it, you can usually go on to live a normal life." And Hannah did just that. She continued working as a teacher in Harlem for a few years. She later relocated to Kensington, Maryland, where she worked as an assistant teacher at a Montessori school. On September 3, 2013, Hannah was last seen walking just before 8 a.m. walking to work. However, she failed to show up for work, and once again, the 28-year-old teacher was reported missing. Her wallet and phone had been found laying by the road. The next day at 10:30 p.m., Hannah found herself in a creek roughly 3 miles from where she was last seen. She borrowed a stranger's phone to call her mother to pick her up. She told police that she did not remember where she was or how she had gotten there. The last thing she remembered was walking to the plaza on the afternoon of September 2nd, where she had lunch. After lunch, she began walking, but had no recollection beyond that. Hannah seemed to recover quickly from her second fugue. She returned to work only a few days later and was as efficient as ever. There were discussions of her getting an ankle monitor, though it never happened, and a year later, she moved back to St. Thomas to pursue her dream as a kindergarten teacher. On September 6, 2017, St. Thomas was struck by Hurricane Irma. Hours of pouring rain and hurricane-force winds left many parts of the island in shambles. Dozens of people were left with destroyed roofs, flooding, and collapsed homes. The island barely had time to recoup when it received the devastating news that a second Category 5 storm was imminent. Panicked, people began to escape on Mercy ships and private boats, but Hannah insisted on staying on the island. On September 11th, Hannah visited her ex-boyfriend Joey in the marina as he boarded a Mercy ship. He noticed that she looked like she hadn't slept in a while and remembered her feeling distraught from the first storm. Hannah seemed exhausted, but she attributed it to the fact that her apartment had been severely damaged by flooding. On September 14th, Hannah was seen leaving her home around 8 a.m., reportedly planning to go swimming at Sapphire Beach. As time went on, she missed a scheduled meeting at work, and people realized no one had communicated with her through text or phone call in 3 days. That's when her close friend Maggie began calling around in search of the 32-year-old teacher. What Hannah's friends and colleagues in St. Thomas didn't know was that this wasn't the first time Hannah had gone missing. For Hannah's friends back in the United States, the circumstances of her disappearance were eerily similar to her first 2 disappearances. Each one happened at the beginning of a school year, a particularly stressful time for the devoted teacher. In the previous fugues, Hannah found herself in water, which wasn't surprising considering that she had always been drawn to water. Hannah had told friends that she found the world underwater so peaceful and magical. The way she described it was that she finds herself in a body of water and realizes who she is. Maggie was given the cryptic direction to look in the water and immediately knew she needed to search Sapphire Beach, an area where Hannah frequently snorkeled. Hannah's car was found in the beach parking lot with her purse, wallet, passport, hundreds of dollars in cash, and cell phone still inside. On a stool nearby, Hannah's sundress was neatly folded. Employees of a small seaside bar came across her sandals and car keys while cleaning up the beach after Hurricane Irma. Sadly, this time, the circumstances of her disappearance coincided with the arrival of Hurricane Maria, one of the worst storms to ever hit the Caribbean. On September 20th, Hurricane Maria brought devastating winds, severe flooding, and more widespread destruction across the Virgin Islands. The Coast Guard extensively explored the coastline by boat and sent 3 helicopters to aid in the search. Friends combed through the passenger manifests of people evacuating the island but came up short. They canvassed homeless shelters and hospitals, but the search effort had to be called off after 3 days as the focus shifted towards disaster response. Extended search efforts by local authorities and family and friends resumed in the following weeks, but no sign of Hannah was ever found. On September 23, 2018, an adult skeleton washed up on the shore of an uninhabited island off the coast of St. Thomas. The remains were too decomposed to retain any identifying information, so it's unknown who the remains belonged to, but it is speculated they belonged to Hannah. Hannah's mother remains optimistic about finding her. In an interview for The New Yorker, she said, "I do have the sense sometimes that she's around any corner." In an email correspondence, her father said, "I am sure that Hannah is out there, but I do not know if she is safe in the arms of Jesus or if she is still walking around on this earth with the rest of us." Reports of possible sightings emerge often, but more often than not, they're the same vague description of either a white teacher at one of the private schools on the island or a homeless woman in Massachusetts. In 2018, a GoFundMe campaign was initiated by Hannah's mother to pay for the services of a professional private investigator. Barbara explained that they had exhausted the resources of the Virgin Islands Police Department, Search and Rescue, the Coast Guard, and the FBI. In the years following her third disappearance, speculation has swirled. Dissociative fugue is often associated with conditions of extreme mental stress. It's almost like a psychological escape mechanism. Many online forums have discussed that her family was opposed to her sexuality, and this may have triggered the fugue state. Another popular theory regarding the case of Hannah's fugue is her father. He is described as a deeply religious man who left his family to be a missionary. Curiously, both the 2008 and 2013 fugues occurred after Hannah had returned home from traveling abroad with her father. Before her third disappearance, Hannah was hypnotized by professionals in an effort to recall any event from her past that may have been repressed. In an interview, Hannah said, "There's so many different theories about what causes it, but there's no one trigger that's emerging, honestly. But that's the hardest thing, is if I don't feel confident about the trigger, how do I start with prevention?" Hannah vanished without ever discovering what caused her dissociative amnesia. Now those who love her carry that unanswered weight, continuing the search for her. Even as time stretches on, they hold fast to hope, the belief that somewhere, somehow, Hannah may still return, just as she once did. Thank you for listening to Without a Trace. I hope you enjoyed our deep dive into Hannah's disappearance. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and follow Without a Trace on social media. And join me next week as I dive into another case.